So you're in the right place if you want to practice task 1. Okay, well, with that being said then, let's go into our first task of the day, which will be looking at multiple charts. Now, this is definitely something that can be intimidating, a little bit overwhelming, not sure where to start with more than one chart. So we'll break it down today and talk through this. Okay, so the question itself then, let's have a look. The chart below shows the amount of money per week spent on fast foods in Britain. The graph shows the trends in consumption of fast foods. Write a report for a university lecturer describing the information shown below. Okay, so the first thing that pops out to me is we have a chart, just one because there's no S, about the money per week spent on fast foods in Britain. And then we have a graph. So we're being told about the two different charts here. The graph shows the trends in consumption of fast foods. Okay, so then we're being asked to write a report for, in this case, a university lecturer. Now, task 1 might be phrased in a few different ways, but that will not change the way that you approach this. So we're still picking the main information, the relevant information, and we are reporting back as if we would in any task 1. Okay, then I think we can bring in the charts and the chart and the graph here. Right, so we've got the bar chart at the top, and that is looking at the amount of money per week spent on fast foods. Right. So we've got people in a high income bracket, average income bracket, and low income, and how much they spend on fast food. Expenditure on fast foods. Do we have a variable for this one? It doesn't look like it. All right. And then sorry, just checking that we didn't have a, maybe this is in pounds or hundreds of pounds, or I'm not too sure. But that's okay. Well, it's in Britain, so it will be in pounds. So we can assume that's all right. Okay then, so then we have a line graph underneath here. And we've got the years and we've got the trends. And again, we've got on the y-axis numbers, but we're not sure, we haven't got what they're referring to, but we can, of course, still pull from that. We can use these numbers. That's no problem. All right, so a bar chart and a line graph today then. But we've actually got the same key in both. We've got hamburger, fish and chips, and pizza. And we're talking about their trends and the money being spent on them. Right, so let's have a think. We've got, we could either, some people might be inclined to write about the bar charts and then write about the line graph in two different groups. That could be a good tactic. Or we could maybe group together hamburger, fish and chips, for example, and then talk about pizza. I think to keep it simple, which is what we want to do, we can talk about the bar charts in group 1, and then we can talk about the line graph in group 2, and we'll compare them, compare within the charts and graphs themselves, and then between both of them. So, well, I'll show you how we can do that today. Okay, so the overview then, let's have a look. So as the income decreases, so as we get to lower incomes, Less money was spent on, let's say, hamburgers, this one here in the dark color, and pizza. That follows the same trend. Whereas fish and chips sort of fluctuates. Although it fluctuates, its popularity goes up over the years. Whereas pizza's sort of declines. And hamburger, that popularity goes up. So a general overview then, we're just going to talk about something to basically summarize a sweeping statement about what we're seeing here. So we can say as income decreases, so does the popularity of hamburgers. Oh, actually, no. So does not the popularity. That increases, but the money, the amount that people are spending on them also decreases. So does the amount of money being spent on them, even though the popularity increases over time. Okay then, so we've got our bar charts, we've got our line graph, and then we can talk about our overview as well. Right, so let's go to the write-up and we'll put this all together. We've got the question up here. We've got some really nice words we can use to describe trends. So when you combine these verbs with adverbs, that makes for really nice ways to describe the data. And of course, we've got the data itself, so we can have a look at that for when we're pulling our numbers from them. Right, okay. So what do we need to do first? Well, we need to paraphrase these couple of sentences here. Okay, so we can think about the chart below shows the amount of money per week spent on fast foods in Britain. We can be more specific. The bar chart, maybe pictured, displays the expenditure on convenience foods in the United Kingdom, maybe. The graph shows the trends in consumption of fast foods. Okay. The line graph illustrates the popularity of these food items over time. Okay, let's read this back. The bar chart pictured displays the expenditure on convenience foods in the United Kingdom. The line graph illustrates the popularity of these foods over time. Alrighty, so then we want to go into our overview and we're going to talk about hamburgers, because that's a big part or a sort of noticeable trend here. So as the we could say maybe in general, nice way to open this up. In general, the maybe pound sterling, that's the currency in the UK, the pound sterling spent on hamburgers decreases alongside the as the incomes decline, so we're using words from here, so that as incomes decline, maybe even though the popularity, or we've used popularity, the interest in this food item or in this food heightens over time. In general, the pound sterling spent on hamburgers decreases as incomes decline, even though the interest in this food heightens over time. Okay, so let's now dive into the bar charts and we can talk about the different trends. And this is when we're going to focus on our pulling our numbers and statistics from the graphs themselves. Okay, so we've mentioned hamburgers. We could start off with hamburgers. So let's just make it clear what we're talking about. So when examining the amount of money that was put towards certain foods, hamburgers are the most common in high income with high income individuals, maybe. Let's say £42. This dramatically we've used decrease, drops when it reaches average incomes, and by low incomes it is, oh, let's check our tense. Actually, we should be in the past tense. Hamburgers were the most common. This dramatically drops when it reaches average incomes, and by low incomes it stood at 15, just over 15. Sometimes it's hard to read these graphs. Maybe 16. Okay, so that's hamburgers. Now let's talk about maybe fish and chips and pizza briefly. So we don't have to pull everything, but let's talk about how pizza follows a similar pattern or trend. Pizza follows a similar trend of dropping in expenditure. The lower the income, the lower maybe another word for income. We'll think on that one. And by low, and in the low income category, it witnessed 5, 6, 7 pounds. Okay, what about fish and chips? Fish and chips. Fish and chips, on the other hand, was most maybe consumed by average incomes. £25. Okay, let's read this back. When examining the amount of money that was put towards certain foods, hamburgers were the most common with high-income individuals, £42. This dramatically dropped. So we're checking tense and spelling and just editing as we're going along. This dramatically dropped when it reached average incomes, and by low incomes, it stood at 16. Pizza followed a similar trend of dropping in expenditure the lower the income, and in the low income category, maybe expenditure as incomes declined, and in the low income category, it witnessed £7. Fish and chips, on the other hand, was the most consumed by average incomes, £25. Who spent. Okay, I think that's good. We've addressed the bar chart. So now let's, we've also compared within the bar charts. So now let's look at the popularity, and we can compare this with the bar chart as well. So we can talk about the rise of hamburgers and fish and chips, even though the money spent on them declined over the years. In the line graph, it is notable that hamburgers and fish and chips increased in interest after 1980, particularly after the 1980s. And by the mid 1990s, they were at 500. We're not sure what these figures are referring to, but we'll state them, and just under 300 respectively. And then I like a bracket sometimes, even though, and we'll compare them to the bar chart, even though families were spending less on them, or even though they weren't as popular in lower incomes, with lower incomes. Okay. Now let's just pick on something else, maybe pizza. We could talk about oh, actually, fish and chips was we could say, even though hamburgers weren't as popular with lower incomes, fish and chips, however, maybe we could say people were less inclined by fish and chips over time gradually over the 20 years, ending in 1990 with just over 200. Okay, let's read this back and see how it sounds. It is notable that hamburgers and fish and chips increased in interest, particularly after the 1980s, and by the mid-1990s they were at 500 and just under 300 respectively, even though hamburgers weren't as popular with lower incomes. People were less inclined by fish and chips gradually over the 20 years, ending in 1990 with just over 200. We can put in a however there. People are less inclined, however. Okay, then, so we can see how we have structured this. We've just addressed one charts and graph at a time and tried to compare and contrast. Go back, checked our spelling, checked our tense as well. This is in 1990, so we're talking about it as if it was in the past, as it was. And yeah, we're just checking that as we go along. So let's count the words now and see what we've come to. Okay, so this comes to 186 words. So just over the 150 minimum there. If you have time, you can always add some more information, maybe on the line graph, but this is quite a realistic amount to aim for. And at least you've seen how we've structured it. So we've got paraphrasing, our overview, and then our two groups, which is a really straightforward way to structure your task ones. I would recommend this way. Okay then, so let's have a look at our next task.